Wonderful, Naomi, first time. Wonderful. Glad to have you. Oh. Okay, thank you guys very much for joining us today. My name is Dr. Wayford. I'm a double board certified physician in internal medicine and pediatrics who's become very passionate about functional health. And today I'm going to take us through how the modern day diseases are rooted in reversible causes. So there is now strong evidence that most of the chronic conditions that we deal with today, most of these chronic conditions, as a result of something we call metabolic dysfunction, which is just simply a fancy medical term to say energy shortage. And that metabolic dysfunction, energy shortage, is driven by two things: something we call insulin resistance, and the other thing we call microbiome dysfunction or dysbiosis. So entity one and entity two lead to metabolic dysfunction, energy shortage. And that energy shortage then drives the chronic diseases that we face today. I want to take both of these individually and show you how the insulin resistance drives all the chronic conditions we face and microbiome dysfunction, how these two sit central at all the diseases we face. Now, when we talk about insulin resistance, it's just simply a fancy medical term to say that your insulin is not working well. Okay. Insulin is a very critical hormone in the body. I consider insulin to be hormone numero uno. It is the most important hormone in the body. It dictates the smooth structure and functioning of the body. When insulin is working well, everything works well. When insulin is not working well, everything goes, critical systems break down. Why do I call insulin the CEO of the body, the most important? Because of the job of insulin. And the job of insulin is to mobilize glucose. When we eat, the end product of absorption is the release of glucose into the blood. The job of insulin is to mobilize that glucose out of the blood into the cell. Okay? When insulin mobilizes the glucose into the cell, there is a special energy factory in the cell called the mitochondria. In the mitochondria, once the glucose enters the cell, the glucose is shunted into the mitochondria. In the mitochondria, the glucose goes through a complex series of reactions called the electron transport chain with the result of an energy molecule called ATP. Okay? So every cell in the body requires energy to function. When the cell doesn't have the energy it needs to function, it malfunctions. The simple definition of a disease is a group of cells that have malfunctioned. The smallest entity of the body is the cell. Cell group up to form tissues, tissues group up to form organs, organs group up to form systems, and system forms the whole man. So when we say you have a disease, the simplicity defining that is just a group of cells that have malfunction. And the number one reason why a cell malfunctions is because it doesn't have what it needs to function well. What does it need to function well? Energy. So why then is insulin hormone numero uno the most important hormone? Is because without insulin we cannot make energy, and energy is needed for is needed for functioning of the cell. So when we say you have insulin resistance, it means that there is a breakdown in this process. It means your insulin is not working well to be able to do this process. Now, how do you go from your insulin working well to your insulin not working well? How do you develop insulin resistance? That happens in a two-step process, okay? Once upon a time ago, God created us, and our insulin was working well. The first thing that causes our insulin not to work well is something we call too much fat. You see, when you consume way more calories than you're supposed to, those excess calories are taken and converted into fat. This is a cell. A cell is normally supposed to look like that. Okay, normally look like that. Now, when you consume way more calories than you're supposed to, those excess calories get converted into fat. The cell doesn't know what to do with that fat. It comes and lumps that fat into this cell and occupies the space in the cell. Now, this cell is now what I call a fat-laden cell. Fat-laden. It is filled with fat that it should not have. And remember, the job of insulin is that when you have glucose in the blood, insulin is going to mobilize that glucose into the cell. Normally, this cell, which is empty, will be able to take up glucose. But when the cell is fat laden and insulin comes and knocks on the door of this cell and says, knock, 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 cell, I got glucose in the blood. I need you to take it up. The cell tells insulin, I'm sorry, I have no room in the inn. If I were to bring glucose in, glucose is not going to have any place to lay its head because I am filled with fat. So the cell refuses to open its doors, refuses to open the inn because the inn is full of fat that should not be in the cell. And this cell is actually trying to protect itself from excess energy and is acting like somebody. If you ever imagine, we just had Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving is a holiday that people are prone to overeating. When you overeat on Thanksgiving and you feel stuffed, the last thing in the world that you want to do is to bring in any other thing into your mouth. When you feel so stuffed, you're like, oh man, I overeat. Even if there's a favorite thing that you love to eat, your grandmother's favorite pecan pie, when you feel stuffed, you don't want it. That's exactly how this cell is feeling. And you know what, guys? The favorite food for the cell, the favorite food for the cell is glucose. The cell is dependent on glucose, but the cell is so filled with fat that the food, which is the favorite food for the cell, it refuses to take it in because it's so filled with fat. It needs glucose to make energy so that it could survive. But in this fat-laden state, it cannot take it up. So your insulin is not working. Anytime your insulin cannot move glucose into the cell so that energy is made, we say you have insulin resistance. Your insulin is not working. So that's the first way in which you develop insulin resistance, or your insulin starts not to work. Now, this leads to a cascade of a second issue, and that second issue is the second way in which you have a problem with your insulin not working, what we call too much insulin. Okay, now when this cell is not able to take up glucose, glucose is going to accumulate in the blood. That glucose that accumulates in the blood is a trigger for the pancreas to produce too much insulin. Okay, now there is a one-to-one relationship between the concentration of glucose and the amount of insulin produced by the pancreas. When the one-to-one, when the glucose is high, insulin secretion by the pancreas is going to try to match that. When glucose is low, insulin secretion by the pancreas is going to try to match that. So you now have a situation where this fat-laden cell is not taking up glucose. Glucose accumulates in the blood. It triggers the pancreas to produce too much insulin. Too much insulin is no bueno, okay? Too much insulin is bad for the cell. Remember, I described insulin as the CEO of the body that dictates the smooth function and structure of the smooth functioning of the cell. Imagine a CEO of a company that was normally running the company level-headed, and one day that CEO comes to work, he has gone crazy, he has gone cuckoo. He comes to work, he's dragging employees left and right, he's backing out unreasonable orders, yelling at people, you're gonna do it my way or the highway, firing people for no just reason. All of a sudden, he has lost it. And this was supposed to be the CEO who was supposed to maintain order in the company. When a CEO begins to behave like a bully and a tyrant like that, his employees lose respect for them. So when the employees lose their respect for their CEO, it's harder for the employees to do what the CEO asks them to do. They are reluctant to do what the CEO asks them to do. You translate that to the cell, right? When the cell loses its respect for insulin, the cell becomes reluctant to do what insulin asks it to do. It's not excited. And what is the number one thing that insulin asks the cell to do? Open your doors year wide so that I can let glucose in. But insulin is running too much, too high now. Insulin is coming to the cell, yelling at the cell, shouting at the cell, being a bully, flinging the cell left and right, being a tyrant. The cell doesn't take kindly to that high tone insulin. And when it has lost its respect for insulin, when insulin tells the cell, hey, open your doors this wide, the cell reluctantly does what insulin says. And instead of opening its doors this wide, the cell opens its doors this wide. Okay? Because it has lost its respect for insulin. Now, because of that, it causes more and more glucose to accumulate in the blood. A narrower door means the less glucose is entering the cell, more glucose is remaining in the blood. That more glucose remaining in the blood is a trigger for the pancreas to produce even more insulin. That even more insulin is like going from fry pan to fire. A CEO that was crazy this level raises their craziness game to this level. The employees of that CEO lose even more respect for the CEO, making it even harder and harder to do what the CEO asks. They become more and more reluctant. Translate that to the cell. When insulin becomes even higher, you've gone from fry pan to fire. The cell loses even more respect for insulin. And when the cell loses even more respect from insulin, insulin had initially told the cell, open your doors way wide so I could let glucose into the cell. As a loss of respect, the cell reluctantly opened its doors yay wide. Now, the cell loses even more respect for insulin acting as a bully. The cell now will put its doors this low, this wide. So a narrower and narrower door, more and more glucose is getting stuck in the blood. You have a vicious cycle. So those are the two ways in which you develop insulin resistance. Too much fat and too much insulin. Those two things. And when you develop insulin resistance, your insulin not working, you now have a slew of illnesses. Diabetes is one of the most common things that everybody will associate to insulin. But insulin is not just diabetes. Insulin is the reason why you're diabetic. It's the reason you have fatigue. It's the reason you have erectile dysfunction. The reason you have heart disease, fatty liver. What I want you all to understand is that insulin sits at the key of energy production. And every cell in the body needs energy to function. When a cell doesn't have the energy it needs to function, it malfunctions. And the simplest definition of a disease is a cell that has malfunctioned. So, insulin resistance sits as one of the root causes. And I cannot find a slide big enough to put all the diseases in the world that come as a result of insulin not working. This is just a slide which is not exhaustive to paint the picture of what insulin resistance does. The second thing we'll examine is what we call microbiome dysfunction or dysbiosis. To understand that, it's important to first of all understand what the microbiome is, which is a group of about 30 to 100 trillion bacteria that live in our colon. This colony of 30 to 100 trillion bacteria called the microbiome. We live in a do for me, I do for you, scratch my back, I scratch my back, I scratch your back relationship, quid pro quo. We're supposed to provide food and shelter for these organisms, and they are supposed to perform certain vital functions. I want to highlight two important functions here. One, these 30 to 100 trillion bacteria found in our gut help to protect our gut from pathogenic bacteria. Pathogenic just simply means disease-causing bacteria. And they do so in one way, by producing a very special short-chain fatty acid here. You see, the cells of the gut align together one to another like this. Okay, so you have one cell to another cell. Where my fist meet, where my knuckles are, is what you call the tight junction, where one cell meets the other cell to form a wall at that point. Now, the tight junctions are like security checkpoints of the gut. These short chain fatty acids, right, go on, they are like concrete. The short chain fatty acids, which are molecules produced only by the bacteria in the gut, go and pour concrete, on the short chain fatty acids are like concrete that they come and put on this tight junction to keep it strong so that there is no weakness there. If there is no weakness there, there is no leak and bacteria cannot seep in. So short chain fatty acids, think of them as being cement or concrete coming to reinforce this tight junction. The tighter it is, you cannot have a space where bacteria escapes into the blood. The other thing I want to emphasize is that the microbiome, these organisms help to regulate and train the immune system. You may not know it, but 70% of the body's immune system resides in the gut. The other 30% resides in the bone marrow, the lymphatics, the lymph nodes. 70%. The microbiome is responsible for training the immune system. So it helps the immune system to have what we call an appropriate response. Hey, this is the kind of fire you need to use for this. Hey, this guy is not a threat, don't worry. This is how it looks like. When the microbiome is healthy, it gives the immune system a healthy training, which looks like this. Hey, do you see that bacteria right there? He's a bad guy. But you know what? Even though he's a bad guy, you could easily kill him. If you just took a little stone and shot that bacteria, he will die. You don't need an overkill on him. So the microbiome has given the immune system the right training on how to react, to a threat based on the level of the threat. It comes to the immune system again and says, hey, you see that other bacteria right there? He's a bad dude. If you were to take just a simple stone to take him out, yeah, he's not gonna die. This is a very bad bacteria. You're gonna need to drop a grenade in his backyard. Okay, a simple stone will not take him. So this is so the microbiome is now giving the immune system. This is the level of force you need to use for this bacteria. This is the level of force you need to use for this other bacteria. Appropriate level of force. Now, when the microbiome is also healthy, one other thing it trains the immune system, it tells the immune system, hey, do you see that bacteria right there? Or it says, do you see that guy right there? Not bacteria. The immune system says, what guy? I can't see that guy. And the microbiome says, look well, the reason you cannot see that guy right there is because that guy right there, he's in camouflage. He's wearing camo. He may look like the enemy, but be careful. He's not the enemy. He is one of us. Please do not fire any bullets at him. So giving the immune system a training to recognize, a friend as a friend and not to take a friend as an enemy and not to fire on a friend. When the immune system is, when the microbiome is unhealthy, the opposite happens. It gets an unhealthy training from the immune system, and the immune system trains the microbiome to be ready for a fight. It's hungry for a fight. Have you ever met somebody who is easily angered? The smallest thing, the snap, they're ready to pick a fight. That's what the microbiome does to the immune system when the microbiome is unhealthy. It causes the immune system, to also, use force that is unnecessary. For example, it may see a bacteria and the microbiome tells the immune system, you see that bacteria? He's a bad guy. You could probably take him out with a stone, but we've already sentenced him to the fact that he's a bad guy. Why use a stone to kill him when you could drop a grenade in his backyard? Let's have a splash. So an overkill that the microbiome has now trained the immune system to do. You get an overkill, you have inflammation that you should not have. Another thing is that the microbiome will tell the immune system, I see this guy right there. I think he's in camouflage. But you know what? I'm not sure. I know that if somebody is in camouflage, they may be the enemy or they may be ours. But the microbiome tells the immune system, you know what? In the heat of the battle, I don't have time to figure out whether that guy in camouflage is the enemy or is my friend. Let's just shoot first, ask questions later, blow his head off. We'll take him to the autopsy table and find out if he was a friend or the enemy. If he's an enemy, great. If he's a friend, oh well, I was just trying to protect us. And when the microbiome gives that training to the immune system ends up attacking the body's cells that may look like the enemy, but not the enemy. And there lies the development of autoimmune diseases because as a result of an unhealthy training of the microbiome. So I wanted to highlight those synthesis of vitamins the microbiome also does. But when you have, so now that you understand what the microbiome is, let's go to what is dysbiosis of microbiome dysfunction. You see, in the gut, the bacteria live in a 50-50% population. 50% of the bacteria 50% of the bacteria in the gut are the bad bacteria, and the other 50% of bacteria are the good bacteria. The good and bad live in that 50-50% population, and they balance each other out. Okay. When we say you have dysbiosis or microbiome dysfunction, it's a situation where the bad bacteria have increased in number to maybe 70%, and the good bacteria is low at 30%. How does that happen? The number one reason why that happens is a shortage of food. When there is a shortage of food for the bacteria, it sets into motion survival of the fetus. The food for the microbiome is fiber. And unfortunately, our foods are so processed, we are not consuming enough fiber. We are consuming so little fiber. So because the food for the microbiome is fiber and we're not consuming enough fiber, it causes shortage. When there is shortage of food, it causes survival of the fetus. And in survival of the fetus mode, the bad bacteria, that is the stronger bacteria, are going to hoard the little fiber that is there, the little food that is there. They hoard it. After hoarding it, they say to themselves, you know what? Let us go ahead and increase our army so that we could keep a hold on the little fiber that is there. And as a result, you have this situation where the bad bacteria is 70% up, the good bacteria are 30% down, and a disequilibrium in that, which is what we call dysbiosis. And when you have dysbiosis, it causes all of these issues. I talked about the microbiome training the immune system to attack the body cells. Lupus is an autoimmune disease. Hashimoto's autoimmune disease. MS autoimmune disease. Celiac autoimmune disease. These are some other issues that issues that come as a result of the microbiome being unhealthy. And this list is not exhaustive. Again, I cannot come up with a slide big enough to encompass all the diseases that come as a result of your gut being unhealthy. But I want to highlight anxiety and depression because when I first learned of this as a physician, I have to confess, sorry. When I first learned of this as a physician, I have to confess, I was surprised. You see, anxiety and depression are linked to the gut heavily. You may not know it, but 90% of the hormone called serotonin, which is the hormone that helps to maintain your mood, 90% of that hormone, the happy hormone, is produced in the gut. The other 10% of it is produced in the central nervous system. So when your gut is unhealthy, you're going to have anxiety and depression because an unhealthy gut cannot put out serotonin. So huge implications here. Now, this slide I call the metabolic sequence of disease. It just tells us that the two root causes, insulin resistance and dysbiosis, result in energy dysfunction, which cause injury to the cell, which leads to chronic inflammation, and that chronic inflammation expresses itself as diseases and symptoms. Now, this may seem dark, but there is now evidence, just as there is evidence that these chronic diseases are the result of insulin resistance and dysbiosis. Luckily, there is now more and more scientific evidence that these two things that cause the energy shortage, if you could reverse them, you can reverse the disease condition. So, and I like to explain it this way. These two things cause energy shortage. The energy shortage causes the cell to malfunction. You have a disease condition. If you have a car that is driving on the road and the car runs out of gas, the car is going to stop. The car stops because it has run out of its energy source, not because of an intrinsic failure of the engine. If you walk to the nearest gas station, you buy gas, and you go back to your car on the side of the road and pour gas in that car starts to work again. Why? Because you have restored its energy shortage. So it is with the body, guys. The science is now finding that these diseases, which our great grandparents did not have, which are modern day diseases coming as a result of our lifestyle. These diseases are 100% reversible when we restore the energy shortage by reversing the insulin resistance and reversing the dysbiosis. And so I want to present to you a solution which as a physician has become one of my favorite tools in helping people to be able to reclaim their health, called the Feel Great System, made up of two products, Unamate and Balance. And what it does, it uses the science of intermittent fasting, and fiber supplementation to reverse insulin resistance and reverse dysbiosis. I want to examine the first product in the protocol called the Unamate. Unamate, how does Unamate reverse insulin resistance? It contains a special a phytonutrient called chlorogenic acid. Chlorogenic acid is a polyphenol. And polyphenols, what they do, they have a property of causing fat burning, lipolysis, okay? So when you consume the yerba mate, by the way, these are what we call nutraceuticals. Nutraceuticals are product made 100% from plants, no medicines in it, but has therapeutic benefits, 100% from plants. So when you consume the Unamate, it has a property of lipolysis, fat burning. So let's go back to how you developed insulin resistance. You had this cell that was filled with fat. Now you consume Unamate. You consume Unamate, which causes you to burn fat. I'm sorry. Unamate, which causes you to burn fat. Because it causes you to burn fat. This cell that was filled with fat and could not take up glucose now goes to looking like this. You burn the fat in the cell, it now goes back to normal, looking like that. Now the glucose, that could not enter the cell is now able to enter this cell. And when glucose can now enter the cell, it could now be passed through the energy machine, the mitochondria, to make energy. You have reversed the energy shortage. The other thing is that when this glucose now enters the cell, the concentration of glucose in the blood drops. When the concentration of glucose in the blood drops, it helps to solve the second problem, because when glucose was high, it caused the body's insulin to be too much. Now when glucose concentration drops, the body's insulin levels, there's a text message sent to the pancreas, decrease your amount of insulin. So insulin becomes low. Low insulin is like a CEO of the company who was initially crazy, who comes to work one day, he calls an in-service meeting to the employees and say, hey, listen, I am very sorry. I've been a jerk for the last 2-3 months. I want you to forgive me. I know that I have said unreasonable thing, done unreasonable thing. Very humble. In that humility, the employees of the boss apologize after his apology, forgive their boss and regain their respect. When they regain their respect back for the boss, they are more excited to do what the boss says. You translate that to the cell. When insulin now becomes low, the cell regains its respect for insulin. When insulin now tells the cell, open your doors this wide so that I can let glucose in, the cell is open to open its doors this wide. And now you're reversing insulin resistance by just that. That's what the Unamate does. The other product is The other product in the fuel grade system is balance. Balance is simply fiber. And fiber is amazing because fiber does two things. It reverses insulin resistance by exactly the same slide. But the other thing that fiber does is it helps to bring down your glycemic index. It decreases the spike in your glucose. It causes a decrease in carbohydrate absorption so your glucose doesn't go up. What are the implications of that? If you and I went to Italian restaurant to eat lasagna, and you ate your lasagna without fiber, your blood sugar is going to do that, and that'll be a blood sugar of maybe 180. Okay, just making up numbers. If I know a thing or two about balance, I know it contains a lot of fiber. I consume the balance product, and then after consuming the balance product, I take the same amount of lasagna that you ate. My blood sugar is going to do this. And that spike in my blood sugar, or not spike, that level peak of my blood sugar will be a blood sugar of maybe 90. So why is that important? Because your blood sugar has gone up to 180, your pancreas is going to have to produce a commensurate high amount of insulin to deal with that blood sugar of 180. So for you, your pancreas will produce 20 units of insulin here. For me, my pancreas is going to have to produce a commensurate low amount of insulin to deal with that blood sugar of 90. So for me, my pancreas may produce 5 units of insulin. I want you to think about 20 units of insulin as the crazy CEO that the employees do not respect. And I want you to think about 5 units of insulin as the humble CEO. When your insulin is low, it causes your cells to be more responsive to that. So that's what fiber does. The last thing that fiber does is that fiber helps to reverse insulin resistance, but fiber is food to the microbiome. Fiber is food to the microbiome. The shortage, dysbiosis came as a result of shortage of food that led to survival of the fetus. When you feed the microbiome fiber, which this contains, there's enough food for the good and the bad. Everybody is happy. And I like saying this, every living organism, whether it's a lion in the jungle of Cameroon, where I'm from, or a bacteria in your gut, all need food, all need nutrients, and the nutrient for the microbiome is fiber. So just by giving the microbiome fiber, you reverse dysbiosis. So the feel good system has become my favorite tool in helping people reverse insulin resistance and dysbiosis, and restore the stolen energy that led to their disease conditions. And I make a bold statement that it can help you reclaim your health again. If you suffer from any chronic medical condition, chances are those chronic medical conditions are the result of these two things. And the feel great system gives you the opportunity to hit the problem at its root. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I will pass on to Dr. Kenny and Dr. Tiffany for you guys to take it from here.
Hey, Dr. Dieter, thank you so much, brother. I'm going to pull up my screen. I'll just kind of share a little bit of my story. And thank you so much for your time, brother. Trying to move this up here. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So I've been on this. Just so everybody knows a little bit about me. I nearly almost died from what Dr. Dieter just taught you last year. I was one of those people, those 93 percenters that had this, that had no clue that I had this. And it put me in the hospital. And this right here, insulin, as Dr. Dieter alluded to, makes your cells multiply, grow, and age. And this was a picture of me last year. That is February 26th of 2024. That's what I looked like. That's what I felt like, right? This was me in the hospital. I nearly spent 2 months of my life there. And I was so weak, so sick that I couldn't even wipe my own rear end. I hate to tell you this. My wife had to do that. Now, many of you may have the thought process as I did. When I heard the word insulin, I thought, I'm not diabetic. Like, why do I really care about this? And when I was in the hospital, they were waking me up. Dr. Dieter would know this very well. Every hour to two, I was on blood thinners for AFib, and they were checking my blood. Now, because when they do this, you don't rest. And so when you don't rest, you become higher insulin resistant rates very quickly. And the next thing you know, my fasting blood sugar was so high, it was in the 160s when I was waking up. They were actually injecting me with insulin. That was one of those God ha moments. Now, when I got out of the hospital, this is me right here, and this is me 35 days later. Now, at the time, I dropped around 50 pounds of weight. I don't even know how much I've weighed now. I don't even step on the scale. It doesn't even matter. I could care less because I continue to lean up and continue to add more muscle. My AFib is gone. My fatty liver is gone. And also my sleep apnea is gone. My wife's really happy about that. Sorry, this is Keith's foot, who's going to also present. Keith had a diabetic foot ulcer, and I'll let him share this with you. They killed him last year. And he found, this protocol on TikTok and just started to use it. And I'll let him share the rest. But let me ask you all a question. If you saw this husband and wife right here, and they're supposed to be going in their golden years, golden for who? Them or for those big companies? And this is them currently. Now, if you saw them go from this to this, I don't know about you, but I would definitely ask them what they're doing. Does it look like he's losing muscle? And so in this, reason I'm bringing this to your attention is this company, when your family and friends ask you what you're doing, which they will, with this 90-day money back guarantee, you have risk free to try it. We'll explain that. But when you ask them and they give you that little discount code that they have, you get the same discount price and you would get a $10 coupon for the referral. Now, this is my friend John. I met through this. I speak in Texas all the time. I'm going to be in Texas next month speaking in Houston and Harlingen, Texas, and up with Dr. Dieter in the Dallas area. This man had never sipped alcohol in his life. Devout Christian man, and he developed fatty liver. He had skin tags all over his body. He had triple digit high blood pressure numbers, both systolic and diastolic. That's both numbers. Sleep apnea so bad he said he was waking up his neighbors. This was John at 67 years young as his chef within a matter of months. He's down 65 pounds off all medications. Fatty liver's gone. He's so ecstatic. He drove an hour to meet me to thank me. Now, this is your own right here, Dr. Dieter. I let Dr. Dieter's like, man, look at me. I look like a picture of healthier, doc. And so
I was a big boy.
Doc, I had you beat, brother. So, but I was 240 to 50, and I think Dr. Dieter was 220. Now, he found the power of fasting, and a lot of people are going to say, why not just fast? I mean, come on. Why not? And absolutely. I mean, this is Dr. Dieter, 5 to 6 years of fasting and running 3 times a week. This is him 2 months on this protocol, just adding the tea and the fiber, making this fasting super simple. And now Dr. Dieter shares this with everyone. This is a friend of mine, Colleen. This is a year apart. I just want to show you sustainability. This is food listed in the PDR.net. And Colleen was using, in this picture right here, 1/4 of a thyroid medication. She was off her metformin, she was off her blood pressure, and off her cholesterol, statin medication. Her diabetes is now reversed, all through blood work, all confirmed through a medical doctor. This is my friend Deb. Many of you, Dr. Dieter, lays out dysbiosis like no other. Okay, leaky gut, you may have heard of it for the lay term. This was Deb, our friend, who 7 months apart, fixing insulin resistance, she went from this to size 12, having headaches daily, low testosterone. She had damage, she had allergies, all caused by gut dysbiosis, and she had IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. In 7 months, Deb went from a size 12 to a size 4. Headaches are gone, testosterone's back to normal. And she's also, her allergies and IBS is gone. Angelita, a nurse practitioner and friend of ours, this is her. She was referred by Dr. Natasha, another medical doctor that referred Dr. Dieter. And Angelita told me she had been on 10 years, 5 different medications. She was on 5 for GERD and sleep apnea, and her 6th one was for antidepressant, for depression. And in 2 weeks, Angelita was able to get off all those medications. And I think it's pretty obvious the transformation in this beautiful woman. This is another one we get a lot of. Is there caffeine? There is natural caffeine that occurs. This is a box from Canada. And this is low energy. Do you guys see that? And I had cardiac AFib before I started this. I had 0 issues. And if you're concerned, you can always reduce that. Now, I want to show one more. This is another foot ulcer photo. Pretty crazy. This is my friend John. I met through this. John was at home on fixed disability, FMLA, in January of this past year, same time as Keith. Had a foot ulcer that nearly killed him again for the second time, $150,000 later after the first one 7 years ago. And John wound right back up where he was, 25-year diabetic as well. John, in 1 month, was able to heal this right up to there. And John also was able to reverse his type 2. So That's Keith's before and after, as you guys can see, and I'll let Keith share that. One couple more. And here's Chopper, a retired now fire chief. Chopper had developed type 2 diabetes, and in 43 days, I think he told us earlier, was that right, Keith? I think, if memory serves, 43, I think. He's down 34 pounds, reversed his type 2. His PTSD is gone. He said his mood's never been better, and his wife's hormones are all back to normal. She's down 8 pounds in a month. This is my friend Chris, who's now down 90 pounds. Chris is a pastor. And Chris went from this to this, reverse type 2, blood pressure, and every other medication he was on is now gone. So I just want to share that with you, Dr. Dieter. Thank you for allowing me to share that. I think Keith was going to share as well. And you can hear from Keith and Keith's story. Thank you.
Yeah, I was diagnosed diabetic 25 years ago. Was on varying levels of insulin for the past probably 24 of those years. Um, had my cholesterol was out of control. I was taking 15 medication a day. My blood pressure was out of control. I was getting injections in my eyes every other month. And like Dr. Kenny said, come January this year, I my foot ulcer got septic and literally killed me. Um, and when I came back, I made it my goal to better my health. So I started learning and came across this probably around May 1st-ish on TikTok and watched it for a while. And because I'm skeptical, I mean, I'd tried everything over the course of 40 years. Um, and my grandson was born on the 3rd of June. I ordered it. I got it on the 12th, which is my birthday, and I started it that day. And literally, day one, energy was through the roof. Hadn't had energy like that in 30 plus years. Off 108 units of insulin, 6 shots a day, gone. And it only went up from there. By the end of 60 days, I was off 14 medication. I had lost about 55, 60 pounds. By time day 90 got here, all my blood work was normal. I was off all my medication, off all my insulin. My blood work was spot on. My doctors are literally amazed. I was melting before their eyes. Um, and at that point, I was down about 70 pounds. Well, when I moved to Florida, I did not weigh myself since then. And I went to the dentist on Wednesday before Thanksgiving, which is a great place to be before Thanksgiving. And they weighed me. And I literally had to look at the scale twice. And I'm down over 90 pounds now. My driver's license doesn't even look the same. Um, it has been, and it's restored my hope for the future. My grandson's not going to grow up not knowing who I am. My daughter's going to continue. I was planning end of life stuff, and that has all been put on hold. I feel and look younger than I was. It has truly been life altering for me. It truly saved my life.
Keith, in all this too, brother, do you have any loose hanging skin? I mean, 90 pounds.
No, no, everything's tight as it once was. Um, my skin tags are gone. They're shriveling up, just falling off. Like I think I have one left hanging on, which I doubt will be there much longer. It's gotten significantly smaller. It's just a matter of it falling off at this point.
And your
But
podiatrist is sharing it. I don't know if I missed that or
yeah,
not.
my podiatrist is sharing it. My cardiologist is looking at it. I mean, if there was an ologist, when you die, if you don't know this, you get every ologist on the book. And every one of them have looked at it. In fact, my pulmonologist, last time I saw him, just simply said, "You've given me nothing to complain about," which you don't hear that too often from doctors.
It's incredible, man. Thank you so much for sharing, brother.
You are very welcome anytime.
Dr. Tiffany will bring you on. Dr. Tiffany is also, thank you, Keith, for your um, thank you, Keith, for your input on this. Dr. Tiffany is also a double board certified physician. We're gonna bring her on for her to talk. And Dr. Tiffany, I'm gonna put you on the spot. I think there is a question at 7:25 p.m. by Birdman's. The question is, first, if you introduce yourself to us and help us answer the question. The question is, I'm curious, how does this relate to erectile dysfunction and stroke? That was Birdman. I'll let you
Ah,
introduce yourself and
We'll
then
let you have the fun ones, Doc.
yeah.
I see. You saved that for me. Thank you
Yes,
so
I
much.
did.
Like neither one of y'all could do that one, so I don't mind. Hello, hello, hello. I am a real physician, just like Dr. Dieter, just like Dr. Kenny's a chiropractor. We are smart people who figured out that helping people need less prescriptions is where all the fun is at. And so, after practicing primary care, private practice, and doing telemedicine across 48 states, I decided I'm done seeing people sick. So here I am on Zooms, on calls, doing speaking engagements, trying to help people reclaim their health. And so when we're talking about things like, so erectile dysfunction kind of goes right on back to the blood pressure. That's how I like to explain it. I like to explain how we end up getting high blood pressure because of high insulin. So when insulin is high, what it does is it allows your kidneys to hold on to sodium. I'm just going to be very simplistic here. And your kidneys hold on to sodium. So since water follows sodium, that's going to increase blood volume, right? And then what it does also, because of the inflammation and how you can get growth hormone kind of function with insulin too, you can get the lining of the inside vessel getting all fluffy. That'd be a soft term. The point is, it's not smooth for that blood to move through quickly, right? And so you got to increase the pressure to get that to happen. Then nitric oxide, which is something that actually helps dilate the blood vessels. Well, insulin resistance makes that not work as well. So now you have stiff vessels, you have an irregular inside lining, and then you have the increased blood volume. So blood pressure goes up. But at the same time, high insulin also makes the liver make more LDL, those small dense particles. And so that gets in the blood lining. So the problem with cholesterol isn't just the total cholesterol, it's those small dense particles that get in the lining to make that lumen of the blood vessel smaller and smaller and smaller. So you start clamping it off. So yeah, that's going to be problematic for erectile dysfunction and problematic for strokes and heart attacks. And so if we actually get the insulin level down, we can decrease the LDL, small dense particles, we can decrease the blood pressure, and thereby help with something as simple but life-changing as erectile dysfunction.
And Dr. Tiffany, I'm sure you've had plenty of customers. You've been doing this for a while. I've had so many in 70s and 80s, honest to God, texting me, Doc, I'm waking up. Like, I mean, all the time.
Yep, like I did when I was in my 20s.
Yep. Thank you, Doc.
Great question. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Let's see.
Are there any other questions? You guys have done a good job in asking us questions. We all need to check out, before the top of the hour, maybe by 7:55 or 8:55 if you're in Eastern time, because
Oh, Dr. Dieter,
yeah.
Patrice asked, brother. So I'll take like Patrice.
Okay.
Here I am, a retired chiropractor. I used to see honestly almost 1,000 people a week. I saw a lot of people, and I saw so many freaking God bless these people sciatic issues. And I had experienced it myself, and I had no idea that insulin resistance occurs in the nerves and causes sciatica, neuropathy, neuralgia, tinnitus, like all the like we've had people with their eye improve, and I had no idea. And when, as Dr. Dieter taught, when you have insulin resistance, blood sugar is going to raise over time, as Dr. Tiffany just said. It's going to cause the cholesterol to start to cake and things. What's sticky when you bake a cake? It's sugar,
Mhm.
it's flour, and that sticks to everything. And it sticks to that nerve. It rips the myelin off the nerve. I mean, the gut. I mean, everything's connected to this. And I had no clue. I couldn't stand when I got out of the hospital. Like I could not physically stand up from neuropathy and sciatica. And mine was, in my case, it was gone about 10 days. But I used this system and I didn't eat for a couple days. I just used it to fast. It was allowing my gut to reset, like Dr. Dieter taught with gut dysbiosis. My mental clarity was back in hours. I couldn't believe what I felt like. And I knew the power of fasting and not eating, give my digestive system a break. So if someone's dealing with that and they're open to that and it's in a good fit for them and they can kind of do that and go a little longer, it'll help you heal faster. But I'm blown away with what I've learned. I was not taught any of this in chiropractic. We're taught physiology and how the body works.
Yeah,
Blows my mind.
none of us were taught this in medical. I never heard the term insulin resistance in medical school. Never heard the term dysbiosis. Just no clue. We were intentionally not taught this, by our medical training because it's the design by the pharmaceutical industry that underwrites the medical training of doctors, of nurses, of pharmacists, of PAs to keep us blinded so that we can come out of medical school and be tunnel vision and only writing prescriptions. And we as doctors on this panel have seen the light. We want people to take back their health. There is nothing more than your health, nothing valuable. You don't have your health, you can't do anything. I'm going to answer the last couple of questions. We have probably another 4 or 5 minutes. I want to take the first question about kids. If it's safe in kids, is it kids friendly? That Birdsman, that was your question. Absolutely, it's kids friendly. The kids are also not spared of the health epidemic. There are younger and younger kids being diagnosed with PCOS, fatty liver, high cholesterol, diabetes, pre-diabetes, ADHD, and anxiety, all that stuff. I will say that all of my kids are healthy, but I give it to all of my kids. My youngest kid, who I have 4 kids. My youngest is 7 months old. She's not able to take liquids yet, but when she gets to, she'll be getting it. My youngest kid, who I give it to, is 2 years old, and I give it to them every day. So it's kids friendly. It's totally kids safe. Now, the other thing I'll answer about how can high growth hormone be reduced by reducing insulin or working on your insulin resistance. Very easy. Insulin, Dr. Kenny, I'll let you answer that question. You were about to get on.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, like when you fast, you actually increase human growth hormone and testosterone. And human growth hormone actually makes you smarter. It protects your muscles, so you grow. The more muscle we have, the bigger the trough that we soak up glucose, which means we keep our insulin levels lower. Here's the simple thing I ask people. If you're any diabetics on here, if your blood sugar is kept lower, do you need to inject more insulin or less? Do these companies make money when you eat more or less, when you take more or take less? And so the name of the game, what Dr. Dieter just shared, is keeping your insulin levels low. And when you keep that insulin low, you keep it sensitive. Those cells listen better. Your body functions better. Insulin is a growth-like hormone. So if you're dealing with the C disease, it loves insulin. It opens up the cell like a key in your car. And insulin resistance, ladies and gentlemen, when you blow out this key battery, you can't open the car. You can't get the nutrients in the car. That's why you're all exhausted no matter what you eat. And if you take this key and put a new battery in it, that's what happens when you make your insulin sensitive, like Dr. Dieter was teaching you. And now all of a sudden you put a new battery in, and guess what happens? You can get nutrients in the cell. But ketones that your body's producing, disease doesn't eat ketones, only your cells do. So I hope that helps. Without going too far off the page. But my father has prostate. They took it out. And in 2 months, he was able to drop his PSA levels. 2 months. Never had to have radiation. So I put my own parents on this. They both have cancer.
Great. Thank you. We'll take a couple more questions and then we'll close. Really, a couple more questions and we'll close. There's a question of how are other clinicians integrating this into their practice? Tiffany, Dr. Tiffany, do you want to take that?
Sure. So it kind of depends. Are you a practice to where you're owned by a hospital or organization? If this is your own practice that you own yourself, you just offer it as something you're giving to your patients. It becomes something you add to the to the checkout when they're checking out if it fits them. But as outside of that, if you are owned by somebody else, there's probably some guidelines you have to pay attention to. So it would take you understanding your employers or the hospital or whomever is over the clinic. Now, Anne-Marie is on here. She has some people that actually have been using, the clinicians that have using it in their practice. I have a couple, but they've usually owned their own practice.
Yeah, I just launched my own practice. It's still fairly new, so I launched my own practice in November, last month, and this is going to sit at the core of my practice. Many of my patients, I'm going to be using that, to restore their metabolic dysfunction. So there
And
a
I guess
few
it probably, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I guess it kind of, because I see that Leslie says she works for a community clinic. So we have all this information on how to talk to providers about this, how it's in a PDR. I guess it would be if you can get them to come on board and understand this is a
Yeah.
nutraceutical, not in competition with the pharmaceuticals. That may be
Yeah.
something worth looking into.
Yeah. And then Samson SMS. How does insulin resistance, how is it related to prostate cancer? I would like to talk to you one-on-one. I can go into depth about that. Because we do not have enough time to explore that, I cannot give you an answer that will help you understand that with simplicity. But I don't know who you are, but if you are able to get on one-on-one with me, I can break down that to you of how insulin resistance causes cancers. It has to do with DNA repair and DNA replication, and insulin resistance sits at the center of that. If you don't have energy, you cannot repair damaged genes and you could propagate into a cancer. So I can talk a little bit more about that in depth, but it's not something for the interest of time that we can go into detailing. So,
Dr. Dieter, did you see that question somebody had about citric acid, sir, and GERD?
I did not see it.
Dr. Tiffany, you want to answer it?
Yeah.
I did see that. So, okay. So what we're talking about with the citric acid in the products, it's really just that lemon rind that's in there for flavoring. But we do find that, it may sound like it's counterintuitive, but when you improve the insulin resistance, we have people get off of their GERD medications.
Yeah.
It is what happens.
Yeah.
There's commercially derived citric acid that's not necessarily from lemon itself. So that should not actually make this worse, but we're seeing so many great results. It's working on that GERD front.
And if they have trouble, like sometimes they, like add some salt. We talk about this a lot. Good salt, Celtic salt, Himalayan, and you can even take one of the balanced fiber packets on an empty stomach, and that usually crushes that if that gets a flare up. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We see
And
it
you
is very
purchase-
common,
go ahead.
someone that's been on acid reflux medication for 10 years, and they will use this product for 10 days and be off of their acid reflux medication. We do see that. If people are still struggling with it, there are some things that you can do while your body starts to get better and get rid of that acid reflux.
Yeah. Yeah, so we want to thank all of you guys for joining our webinar today. We do these 2 times a week, every month, every Sunday and every Monday, the same time, the same Zoom link. If you listen to this today and you're like, oh goodness, I wish my friend Bob was here to have listened to this. Oh goodness, I wish Aunt Susie was here to have listened to this. Invite Aunt Susie on Sunday or on Monday. Same time, 2 times a week, Sunday and Monday. We want as many people to be exposed to the science of reversible metabolic diseases so that you could take your life back. Take your life back. And if you're invited to this and you're interested in beginning to try to get on the product to begin to retake your life back, please get with whoever invited you. They can give you a link for you to be able to purchase the product with a discount. And one last thing, we are on a mission to help as many people know that they can live disease-free. So we're always looking for people to join our team. There is a team of us trying to collides, if that's a word, America. We want as many people to naturally experience true and lasting health without medication. And if that sounds like a worthy cause to you and you want to jump on our team, get with anybody who invited you. We can tell you more about that. Thank you, guys, and we look forward to seeing you guys on our next webinar with some invitees who were not privy to be on here today. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Doc.
Good
Thank you,
night.
Doc Taylor.
Thank you. Thank you.